Dr. Mira Kelton stared at the strange symbols flowing across her screen. The signal had arrived 3 hours ago at the Villani research station, and she still could not make sense of it. The patterns looked like language, but unlike anything in Earth's databases. "Jake, come look at this," she called to the engineer working on the communication array. Jake Morrison floated over in the zero gravity, his tool belt jingling softly. "What do you have?" Jake asked, grabbing a handhold next to her workstation. "It's definitely artificial. The mathematical patterns prove it's from an intelligent species. But the frequency—" Mira paused, running calculations. "It's coming from the Ashti system, about 40 light-years away." Jake whistled low. "That's deep space. No human colonies out there." The signal pulsed again, stronger this time. Mira's translation program began picking apart the alien words. Slowly, a message emerged on her screen. "Help us," she read aloud. "Our world dies. The Kreks come with fire and death. We are peaceful people. We cannot fight. Please, someone hear us. Help us before we all die." Jake's face went pale. "That sounds like a distress call." "It is," Mira confirmed, her fingers flying over the keyboard. "They're broadcasting on multiple frequencies. Whoever these Ashti are, they're desperate." Far away in the Ashti system, Elder Thymel watched the broadcast with tears in his large, dark eyes. The Krek soldiers stood behind him, their weapons pointed at his family. The recording device hummed as it sent the false message into space. "Good," growled the Krek's commander Vorthak. "Now we wait for the fools to come running." Thymel's heart broke. He knew the message would bring innocent beings to their death. But his people were dying. The Kreks had already destroyed 3 of their cities. If he did not cooperate, they would kill everyone on his world. Back on the research station, Mira worked through the night. She decoded more of the message, learning about the Ashti people. They were scholars and artists, living in crystal cities beneath their world's purple sky. They had no armies, no weapons of war. They were defenseless against the Kreks raiders. "The Kreks Dominion," she muttered, searching through galactic databases. What she found made her blood run cold. The Kreks were known across this part of the galaxy as destroyers. They conquered worlds, enslaved populations, and moved on when resources ran out. Dozens of civilizations had fallen to their endless hunger for power. "We have to report this," Jake said, reading over her shoulder. Mira nodded and opened a channel to Earth Command. The message would take days to reach home through normal space, but quantum communication made it instant. Within minutes, Admiral Cross appeared on the screen. "Dr. Kelton, we received your report. Are you certain this signal is genuine?" "Yes, Admiral. The language patterns check out. The Ashti are real and they're in serious trouble." Admiral Cross was quiet for a moment. Behind her, Mira could see other officers gathered around displays showing star charts and fleet positions. "The Ashti system is outside our normal patrol range," the Admiral said slowly, "but we cannot ignore a distress call from an innocent species." On Earth, Captain Elena Vasquez stood in the briefing room aboard the UES Determination. Around her, other ship captains listened as Admiral Cross explained the mission. "The Ashti sent a desperate plea for help," Admiral Cross said. "Intelligence suggests the Kreks Dominion is attacking their homeworld. These people are peaceful. They have no defenses against a military force like the Kreks." Captain Vasquez studied the tactical display. The Ashti system was far from Earth space, deep in unknown territory. It would be dangerous for their ships to travel so far without support. "What do we know about Kreks' capabilities?" asked Captain Torres from the heavy cruiser Relentless. "Limited data," Admiral Cross admitted. "They use hit-and-run tactics. Fast ships, energy weapons, boarding parties. They avoid straight fights with equal forces. Then they have not fought humans," said Captain Bradley with a grim smile. The other captains nodded. Humans had earned their reputation in the galaxy through hard experience. Earth was a deadly world that produced deadly people. Other species called them Deathworlders and usually avoided contact. But that reputation also meant responsibility. When innocent people called for help, humans answered. "We leave in 6 hours," Admiral Cross announced. 12 ships, full Marine complement. We go in prepared for anything." As the meeting ended, Captain Vasquez walked to the observation deck. Earth turned slowly below, blue and white and beautiful. Soon they would leave this safe harbor and travel into the unknown. Her communication officer approached with a message pad. "Captain, we just received additional intelligence from Dr. Kelton." Vasquez read the report with growing concern. The Ashti had no military at all. Their entire civilization was built around learning and art. They had never fought a war because they had never needed to. "They're like children," she murmured. Innocent children calling for help. The thought made her decision easy. Whatever the Kreks wanted in the Ashti system, they would have to go through human forces to get it. And humans protected their own, even when their own were alien species they had never met. In the Ashti system, Elder Thymel felt the weight of guilt pressing down on him. The forced broadcast had been sent days ago. By now, it might have reached other civilizations. Someone might be coming to help, not knowing they flew into a trap. Commander Vorthak seemed pleased with their work. He had stationed his fleet in the asteroid belt, hidden from long-range sensors. When the rescue ships arrived, they would face overwhelming firepower. "Your message will bring us fresh slaves and salvage," Vorthak told Thymel. "Perhaps I will let some of your people live as a reward?" Thymel said nothing. He could only hope that whoever received their call would be smart enough to stay away. The galaxy had seen too much death already. The human fleet prepared for departure with military precision. Supply ships loaded ammunition and spare parts. Medical teams prepared for casualties. Marines checked their weapons and armor. On the bridge of the Determination, Captain Vasquez received final orders from Earth Command. They were authorized to use any force necessary to protect the Ashti people. If the Kreks wanted a fight, they would get one. "All ships report ready," her navigation officer announced. "Take us out," Vasquez ordered. 12 human warships activated their faster-than-light drives and disappeared into hyperspace. They carried the hopes of an entire species and the fury of humanity itself. Behind them, Earth's long-range sensors detected massive energy signatures in the Ashti system. The readings suggested heavy military ships, lots of them. The trap was set, but now it would spring on predators instead of prey. The rescue fleet jumped through hyperspace toward an unknown fate, not knowing that their arrival would change the balance of power in that entire region of the galaxy. The Kreks had made one critical mistake when they chose to threaten innocent people. They had just invited humanity to the war. The human fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Ashti system. What they saw made every officer curse under their breath. "My God," whispered Captain Vasquez, staring at the tactical display. The beautiful blue world of the Ashti was under siege. Dozens of black ships surrounded the planet, firing orange beams of energy at the surface. "Kreks ships confirmed," reported Lieutenant Morrison from the sensor station. "I count 47 vessels. Various sizes, all heavily armed." Commander Rico Valdez, leader of the first contact team, studied the enemy formation from aboard the diplomatic vessel Harmony. The Krek ships moved like sharks, circling their prey with predatory grace. "Admiral Cross, we need to establish communication with the Ashti before engaging," he transmitted to the fleet command ship. "Agreed," came Cross's voice over the comm. "But stay ready to move fast. Those Krek ships have noticed us." On the planet's surface, Elder Thymel felt his heart skip when the new ships appeared on their sensors. These vessels looked different from the Krek ships. Sleeker, somehow more dangerous. "Guardian Nexus, what do our instruments show?" he asked his military advisor. Nexus, a tall Ashti with silver-blue skin, checked the readings with trembling hands. 12 ships, unknown design. They carry massive energy signatures. Both Ashti looked at each other with growing horror. The false distress signal had worked. Someone had actually come to help them, not knowing it was a trap. "We must warn them," Thymel said desperately. "How?" "The Kreks monitor all our communications." In the asteroid belt, Commander Vorthak watched the newcomers with interest. The ships were clearly warships, but their design was unfamiliar. His intelligence network had no records of this species. "Scan those vessels," he ordered his sensor officer. "I want to know what we're dealing with." The results made him laugh. 12 ships? They brought 12 ships against my fleet? These aliens must be either very brave or very stupid. His aide, a scarred warrior named Grix, studied the tactical display. "Commander, the energy readings from their weapons are unusual. Higher output than expected for ships that size." Vorthak waved dismissively. "Numbers matter more than technology, Grix. Signal the fleet. We'll destroy these fools quickly and return to harvesting this world." The first communication attempt came from Commander Valdez aboard the Harmony. Using universal mathematical principles, he tried to establish contact with both the Ashti and the attacking force. The response came from the planet's surface, transmitted on a weak signal that barely made it through the battle interference. Unknown ships, the translated voice said. I am Elder Thymel of the Ashti people. You must leave immediately. This is a trap. The Krex forced us to send the distress signal. They are waiting to destroy you. Valdez felt cold anger wash over him. These peaceful people had been used as bait. Their desperate cry for help had been turned into a weapon against anyone kind enough to answer. Admiral, he reported to Cross. The situation is worse than we thought. The Ashti were forced to send that distress call. The Krex are using them as bait. Admiral Cross's response was sharp and clear. Then we end this now. All ships, battle formation. We're going to show these Krex what happens when they threaten innocent people. The Krex fleet moved to intercept, confidence radiating from every ship movement. Commander Vorthak opened a channel to the human vessels following standard intimidation protocol. Unknown species. His voice boomed across space. I am Commander Vorthak of the Krex Dominion. You have entered claimed territory. Surrender your ships and prepare for processing or be destroyed. Captain Vasquez listened to the translation with the expression that would have frightened a lesser species. Around her, the bridge crew prepared for battle with cold efficiency. Commander Torres, Captain Bradley, all vessels, she transmitted to the fleet. You heard their offer. Anyone want to take it? The responses came back immediately, filled with human determination and barely controlled fury. Negative. Admiral. Not a chance. Let them try. Admiral Cross opened a channel back to the Krex commander. Her voice was calm, almost conversational, which somehow made it more threatening than any shout. Commander Vorthak, this is Admiral Cross of the Earth Defense Force. You have attacked innocent civilians and used them as weapons against rescuers. That ends now. Vorthak laughed, a harsh sound that echoed through space. Earth Defense Force? I have never heard of your species. No matter. You are outnumbered 4-1. Your ships are smaller than ours. Surrender now and I might let some of you live as slaves. The human response came not in words but in action. The 12 human ships suddenly spread out in a formation the Krex had never seen before. Instead of forming a defensive wall, they scattered like hunters surrounding prey. What are they doing? Grix asked, confused by the human tactics. Vorthak frowned. Most species either charge straight ahead or form defensive clusters when outnumbered. These aliens were acting like they had numerical superiority instead of the reverse. On the planet's surface, Elder Thymel watched the display with growing amazement. The human ships moved with perfect coordination, each vessel taking a position that covered the others while maintaining clear firing lanes. They fight like a pack, Guardian Nexus observed, like the great hunters of our ancient stories. Admiral Cross's final transmission to the Krex was brief and cold. You have 10 minutes to withdraw all forces from this system. After that, we will consider you hostile targets and act accordingly. Vorthak's laughter died as he processed the alien response. 10 minutes? These newcomers were giving him an ultimatum? With 12 ships against 47? Impossible, he muttered. What species would be so arrogant? His question was answered when his intelligence officer finally identified the newcomer's origin point. Commander, the officer said with growing alarm, long-range analysis suggests these ships came from the Sol system. Sol system? What's significant about that? Sir, that system contains a planet designated as Class 12 Deathworld in our databases. The bridge went silent. Every Krex warrior knew what a Class 12 Deathworld meant. It was a rating reserved for planets so hostile that only the most dangerous life forms could survive there. You mean, Vorthak said slowly, these are Deathworlders, sir. They're Deathworlders. For the first time in his career, Commander Vorthak felt a chill of uncertainty. Deathworlders were legends across the galaxy, species that evolved on worlds so deadly that they became living weapons themselves. But surely the legends were exaggerated. They had to be. The 10-minute deadline ticked down with mechanical precision. Human ships held their positions with unwavering discipline. The Krex fleet remained in formation, weapons powered but not yet firing. On the planet below, millions of Ashti held their breath, caught between hope and terror. Their peaceful world had become a battlefield where the fate of 3 species would be decided. The timer reached 0. All Krex vessels, came Admiral Cross's voice, now stripped of all diplomacy. You were warned. Engage. The space around the Ashti homeworld erupted into fire and light as 2 philosophies of war collided. The Krex fought for conquest and glory. The humans fought for something much more dangerous. They fought to protect innocent life, and that made them absolutely merciless. The first exchange of fire lit up space like a deadly fireworks display. Krek's energy beams lanced out toward the human ships, orange light cutting through the darkness. But where they expected to find targets, they found empty space. What? Commander Vorthak stared at his tactical display in confusion. The human ships had moved at the last second, not away from the incoming fire, but directly into it, using their momentum to spiral past the energy beams. Lieutenant Tom Bradley led his fighter squadron through the Krek's formation like angry wasps. His small craft weaved between the massive enemy ships, too fast and small for their weapons to track effectively. Phoenix Squadron, target their sensor arrays, he commanded over the comm. Blind them first. His pilots responded with deadly precision. Missiles streaked out from the fighters, not targeting weapons or engines, but the delicate sensor equipment that guided Krek's targeting systems. Meanwhile, Major Lisa Park coordinated the Marine transports preparing to defend Ashti population centers. From her command ship, she watched the space battle with growing admiration for human tactical innovation. "Sir," reported her aide, "the Kreks are using standard formation fighting. They expect us to do the same. Then let's disappoint them," Park replied with a cold smile. Captain Vincent Torres aboard the heavy cruiser, Relentless, demonstrated exactly what disappointed Krek's expectations looked like. Instead of engaging at long range like a sensible commander, he drove his ship straight toward the largest Krek's dreadnought. "Captain, collision alert," his navigation officer warned. "Acknowledged," Torres replied calmly. "Prepare boarding parties." The Krek's dreadnought's commander watched in disbelief as the human ship accelerated directly toward him. No sane species would attempt a ramming attack against a vessel twice their size. But humans, as the galaxy was learning, had their own definition of sanity. The Relentless struck the Krek ship at half-light speed, her reinforced prow punching through the enemy's side armor like a spear through paper. But instead of simply ramming, Torres had planned something much more devastating. "All Marines, launch," he ordered, as his ship came to rest deep inside the enemy vessel's hull. Airlock doors burst open and human Marines poured into the Krek's ship's corridors. What followed was not a boarding action by galactic standards, but something closer to an invasion. Elder Thymel watched the battle from his government bunker deep beneath the capital city. The tactical display showed something he had never seen before in all his studies of galactic warfare. "Guardian Nexus," he whispered. "Are they actually winning?" Nexus checked the readings again, not believing what he saw. "The human ships are outnumbered 4-1, but they're fighting as if they have numerical superiority." The key difference was becoming clear. Krek's tactics relied on overwhelming firepower delivered from safe distances. They would pound enemy ships with energy weapons until they surrendered or were destroyed. Human tactics were completely different. Every maneuver was designed to get closer to the enemy, not farther away. They used asteroids as cover, not to hide behind, but to ricochet shots around. When their ships took damage, they used the damaged sections as improvised weapons. Commander Vorthak realized the battle was not going according to plan when half his fleet reported boarding actions in progress. "How are they getting Marines onto our ships?" he demanded. "Sir," his aide Grix reported with growing alarm, "they're not using transport ships. They're ramming damaged vessels directly into our hulls and using the wreckage as entry points." "That's insane." "Yes, sir, but it's working." The space around the battle had become a maze of debris, damaged ships, and weapons fire. The Kreks found themselves fighting not just 12 human ships, but 12 human ship crews who treated every piece of floating metal as a potential weapon. Captain Bradley's fighters had successfully blinded 3 Krek's cruisers by destroying their sensor arrays. But instead of backing off, the fighters moved in closer, using their small size to fly directly into the enemy ship's hangar bays. "Phoenix leader to all units," Bradley transmitted. "Remember, we're not trying to destroy their ships. We're trying to capture them." This was perhaps the most alien concept the Kreks encountered. In galactic warfare, ships were destroyed, not captured. The idea of deliberately boarding and taking control of enemy vessels was considered either impossible or insane. Humans apparently considered it standard procedure. Major Park's Marines had successfully landed on 3 Ashti cities, but not to defend them from orbital bombardment. Instead, they were setting up surface-to-space missile launchers, turning the planet itself into a weapon. Target the Krek ships in low orbit, she ordered her battery commanders. Force them higher where our fleet can engage more effectively. The missiles that rose from the Ashti surface were not like anything in the Krek's arsenal. They were smart weapons that could change course mid-flight, track moving targets, and even coordinate with each other to ensure maximum damage. But most importantly, they carried warheads, designed by a species that had spent centuries perfecting the art of destroying things. Commander Vorthak watched his careful battle plan fall apart as human tactics proved both unpredictable and devastatingly effective. His ships were being boarded, his formation was breaking up, and worst of all, his crews were starting to panic. "Sir," Grix reported, "the Bone Crusher reports total systems failure. The humans have taken their bridge." The Stormclaw is reporting the same thing. "Sir, the Doomhammer just exploded. Internal detonation." Vorthak stared at the tactical display as red warning lights multiplied across his fleet status board. In less than an hour of combat, he had lost more ships than in his last 10 campaigns combined. "What kind of species are these humans?" he muttered. The answer came from an unexpected source, one of his captured bridge officers, taken when the humans boarded the cruiser Deathbringer, managed to send a transmission before his ship was fully secured. "Commander," the terrified voice said, "they don't fight like any species we know. They don't try to force surrender. They don't demand tribute. They just keep coming. Even when their ships are destroyed, they keep fighting. They turn wreckage into weapons. They use our own ships against us." The transmission ended abruptly as human marines completed their takeover of the bridge. Elder Thymel felt something he had not experienced in months. Hope. The impossible was happening. These Deathworlders from the legendary planet Earth were not just surviving against overwhelming odds. They were winning. How? Guardian Nexus asked, studying the tactical data. "Their ships are smaller, their numbers fewer. By every rule of galactic warfare, they should have been destroyed in the first exchange." Thymel thought about the question as he watched another Krek ship fall victim to human boarding tactics. Then understanding began to dawn. They're not fighting a space battle, he realized. They're hunting, like pack hunters from our ancient legends. Every move is coordinated. Every attack serves multiple purposes. They're not trying to win a battle. They're trying to eliminate every threat to their pack. The realization was both inspiring and terrifying. The humans had come to save the Ashti, but they were doing it with a ruthless efficiency that no other species could match. The battle continued to rage around the blue world, but the outcome was no longer in doubt. The question now was not whether the humans would win, but what they would do with their victory. Commander Vorthak, watching his fleet crumble around him, began to understand why Deathworlders were legendary across the galaxy. They didn't just fight wars, they ended them. Just when victory seemed within reach, space itself seemed to tear open. Massive tiers in reality appeared at the edge of the system, and through them poured ships. Dozens of them, then hundreds. "Contact," Lieutenant Morrison called from his sensor station, his voice tight with concern. Multiple hyperspace emergent signatures, massive ones. Admiral Cross studied the new arrivals with grim recognition. These ships were different from the raiding vessels they had been fighting. Larger, more heavily armed, and flying in perfect formation. Krek's main fleet, she announced to all human ships. This just became a different kind of fight. Commander Vorthak felt relief wash over him as his reinforcements arrived. Warlord Grixoth himself led the massive fleet, bringing over 200 ships to crush these upstart humans. "Warlord," he transmitted, "the humans fight like nothing we have encountered. They use ramming attacks and boarding tactics. They have taken several of our ships." Grixoth's reply came back cold and harsh. "Then you have grown soft, Vorthak. I will show these Deathworlders how real warriors fight." On the human command ship, Admiral Cross called an emergency conference with her ship captains. The holographic display showed the overwhelming enemy numbers in stark detail. 237 ships, she reported, including 12 dreadnoughts and what appears to be a command fortress the size of a small moon. Captain Torres, his ship still embedded in the Krek's vessel they had captured, spoke first. "Admiral, we should consider withdrawal. We've saved as many Ashti as possible." "Negative," Cross replied immediately. "If we run, the Kreks will follow. They'll hunt down every ship, every colony, every human outpost they can find. This ends here." "Captain Bradley," commanding from a captured Krex cruiser, understood immediately. We're implementing Protocol 7? Confirmed. All ships acknowledge Protocol 7 activation. The human captains went silent for a moment. Protocol 7 was not just a battle plan. It was a declaration that humanity would treat the entire star system as a battlefield, using every resource and weapon available. Engineer Marcus Webb received orders that would have seemed impossible to any other species. His small team was to convert the gas giant's mining stations into weapons platforms within 6 hours. "Sir," his aide protested, "these are civilian mining operations. They have no armor, no weapons, no shields." "Then we'll have to improvise," Webb replied, studying the station blueprints. "Strip the mining lasers and reconfigure them for military use. The refineries can produce explosive compounds. The storage tanks can become missile launchers. Meanwhile, Dr. Amy Foster worked to turn the system's natural phenomena into weapons. The gas giant's massive electromagnetic field could be manipulated to jam enemy sensors and disrupt their communications. If we can create enough interference," she explained to her team, "we can force them to fight us ship to ship instead of coordinating fleet actions." Marine Colonel David Nash found himself explaining human military philosophy to Guardian Nexus as they prepared the Ashti underground shelters. "Your people are safe," he assured the alien commander, "but I need you to understand something about human doctrine." Nexus looked puzzled. "What do you mean?" "We don't fight to win territory or resources. We fight until nothing that threatens our pack can threaten them again. That means every enemy ship, every enemy base, every enemy that might come back for revenge." The Ashti commander stared at the human colonel with growing understanding and fear. "You intend to destroy their entire fleet?" "If necessary, yes." Warlord Grixoth began his attack with overwhelming force, expecting the small human fleet to either surrender or die quickly. His ships advanced in a massive wall of firepower, energy weapons charged and ready. What he found instead was empty space where the human fleet had been. "Where did they go?" he demanded. His sensor officer checked the readings twice before answering. "Sir, they've scattered throughout the system. Individual ships hiding in asteroid fields, behind moons, even in the gas giant's atmosphere." "Cowards," Grixoth snarled. "They run from a real fight." But Admiral Cross was not running. She was hunting. The first Krex ship to die was a destroyer that wandered too close to what appeared to be a disabled human vessel. The trap was perfect. The human ship looked dead in space, broadcasting distress signals. When the Krex ship moved in to investigate, they discovered the disabled vessel was actually a fully functional warship with a very patient crew. The destroyer vanished in a ball of fire before it could send a warning. "Contact lost with Ravager 7, reported Grixoth's communications officer. Probably a systems malfunction," the warlord dismissed. "Continue the advance," but the attacks continued. A supply convoy disappeared near the outer moons. A patrol cruiser went silent while investigating strange energy readings from an asteroid. A communications relay ship simply vanished without a trace. Grixoth began to realize he was not fighting a traditional space battle. The humans had turned the entire system into a hunting ground, and his ships were the prey. "Warlord," his aide reported with growing nervousness, "we've lost contact with 17 ships in the last 2 hours. No distress calls, no battle reports. They just disappear." "Impossible. Deploy the fleet in close formation. No ship travels alone." But even group formations proved vulnerable to human tactics. Captain Torres led an attack on a Krex squadron that should have been suicide. His small force was outnumbered 8-1. Instead of engaging directly, he led the Krex ships on a chase through the asteroid field. The enemy followed eagerly, expecting to corner and destroy the fleeing humans. They did not notice the mining charges that Marcus Webb's teams had planted throughout the asteroid belt until it was too late. The explosions turned space rock into a deadly storm of shrapnel that tore through Krex shields and armor. Of the 8 ships that entered the asteroid field, only 2 escaped, both heavily damaged. Dr. Foster's electromagnetic manipulation began affecting Krex communications. Their perfect fleet coordination started to break down as ships lost contact with each other and with command. "Sir," Grixoth's sensor officer reported, "something is interfering with our long-range communications. Ships are reporting equipment failures across the fleet." Without coordination, the Krex fleet began to fragment. Individual ship captains made their own decisions, often walking directly into human traps. Major Park's ground-based missile launchers turned the planet itself into a weapon. Krek ships trying to provide orbital support found themselves under constant attack from the surface. They've turned the entire world into a fortress, one Krek's captain reported before his ship was destroyed by surface-to-space missiles. Elder Thymel watched the battle from his command bunker, amazed by what he was witnessing. The humans were fighting a war unlike anything in galactic history. They don't just use their ships as weapons, he observed to Guardian Nexus. They use everything. The asteroids, the gas giant, the planet itself. Even our own mining equipment has become part of their arsenal. Nexus nodded grimly. They fight like the system belongs to them, not like visitors passing through. As night fell over the Ashti capital, the space battle continued to rage above. But the tide had clearly turned. Despite being outnumbered 20-1, the humans were systematically dismantling the Krek's fleet. Warlord Grixoth realized with growing horror that he was not fighting a species that happened to be good at war. He was fighting a species that had evolved from predators on a world so deadly that warfare was their natural state. Sir, his aide whispered, perhaps we should consider withdrawal. Grixoth looked at his battle display, showing dozens of red lights where his ships had been destroyed or captured. The humans had not just refused to surrender, they had turned his overwhelming advantage into a liability. No, he said finally, we cannot retreat. If word spreads that the Krek's dominion fled from a handful of Deathworlders, our empire will crumble. We fight until the end. But as more ships disappeared into the dark between the stars, picked off one by invisible human hunters, Grixoth began to wonder if he had just made the last mistake of his career. The humans were not just fighting a battle. They were conducting an extermination, and they were very good at it. The arrival of the Earth Defense Fleet changed everything. Space tore open once again, but this time it brought salvation instead of doom. Through the hyperspace windows came ships bearing the flags of humanity's greatest achievements. Fleet Admiral Sandra Kane stood on the bridge of the massive dreadnought Terra's Wrath, studying the tactical situation with cold efficiency. Around her flagship gathered vessels from Mars, Europa, the asteroid mining consortium, and dozens of human colonies. Admiral Cross, she transmitted to the embattled fleet commander. We received your emergency beacon. Status report. Admiral Kane, we have the situation under control, but barely. The Kreks brought their entire sector fleet. Over 200 ships. Kane studied her displays, noting the scattered debris that had once been Krek's vessels. Understood. We're here to finish this. The human reinforcements did not simply join the battle, they dominated it. The new arrivals brought heavy dreadnoughts, carrier groups, and specialized assault ships designed for exactly this kind of fleet engagement. Warlord Grixoth watched in growing despair as his sensors counted the new arrivals. 87 additional human ships, many of them larger than anything in his fleet. Sir, his communications officer reported, we're receiving a transmission from the new human fleet. Admiral Kane's voice filled the Krek's command ship with quiet authority. Warlord Grixoth of the Krek's Dominion, you have attacked civilians under human protection. You have used innocent people as weapons. This is Fleet Admiral Sandra Kane of the Earth Defense Force. Surrender now and your surviving crews will be treated according to galactic law. Grixoth's pride would not let him surrender to any species, especially not to Deathworlders. I am Warlord Grixoth, conqueror of 17 systems. I do not surrender to anyone. Kane's response was immediate and final. Then you die with honor. All ships engage at will. The final battle became a demonstration of why humans had earned their reputation across the galaxy. The Earth Defense Fleet fought with the coordinated precision of a species that had spent centuries perfecting the art of warfare. Commander Jessica Rivers led the assault on Grixoth's command fortress aboard her. Destroyer Valiant Storm, she knew it was likely a one-way mission. The fortress was the size of a small moon and protected by dozens of escort ships. All Marines, prepare for final assault, she announced to her crew. We end this today. Her ship plunged through the enemy defensive screen like a spear through paper, taking massive damage but refusing to stop. The Valiant Storm's hull glowed red-hot from enemy fire as she closed the distance to the command fortress. Commander, her navigation officer reported, hull integrity at 15%. We won't survive another hit. Then we don't take another hit, Rivers replied. All power to engines. Ramming speed. The Valiant Storm struck the command fortress at full velocity, her reinforced prow punching deep into the enemy structure. But Rivers had planned for more than just a ramming attack. All Marines, Assault Protocol 7, she ordered as her dying ship came to rest in the heart of the enemy fortress. What followed was not a boarding action, but a coordinated invasion. Human Marines poured through the breach, fighting with the desperate fury of a species that refused to let innocents suffer. Elder Thymel watched the space battle from his command bunker, witnessing something that would be remembered in Ashti history forever. The humans fought with a cold precision that terrified even their enemies. They don't fight with anger, he observed to Guardian Nexus. They fight with purpose. Every shot, every maneuver serves their goal of protecting innocent life. The battle reached its climax when Admiral Kane's dreadnought Terra's Wrath engaged Grixoth's command fortress directly. The two massive ships traded fire that lit up half the system, energy beams capable of destroying smaller vessels entirely. But human engineering proved superior to Krek's construction. The Terra's Wrath's armor held while her weapons systematically dismantled the enemy fortress's defenses. Captain Paul Rodriguez, serving as Earth's first xenodiplomatic officer, opened channels to all remaining Krek ships as their command structure collapsed. "Attention, Krek's forces," he broadcast. "Your warlord is dead. Your fleet is destroyed. Surrender now and you will be treated with dignity. Continue fighting and you will share his fate." One by one, the surviving Krek ships powered down their weapons and surrendered. The great fleet that had terrorized this sector of the galaxy for decades was reduced to wreckage and prisoners. In the aftermath, Elder Thymel and the Ashti Council faced a disturbing realization. The humans had liberated them, but these Deathworlders were now the most powerful force in their region of space. Ambassador Rachel Stone, newly appointed as Earth's representative to the Ashti, tried to ease their concerns during the first diplomatic meeting. "We seek only peace," she assured the Ashti leaders. "Humanity has no desire to conquer or control other species. We want only to ensure that what happened here never happens again." But the Ashti had witnessed what human peacekeeping looked like. They had seen an entire fleet destroyed by beings who fought with ruthless efficiency when innocents were threatened. "Ambassador Stone," Elder Thymel said carefully, "your people have shown great kindness in saving us. But we must ask, what happens to those who threaten this peace you seek?" Stone's answer was honest and chilling. "We deal with them." As the first human Ashti Alliance station was constructed in orbit around the liberated world, intelligence reports began arriving from across the galaxy. The news of the Krek's defeat had spread through hyperspace communications to dozens of civilizations. "Ma'am," reported Lieutenant Commander Williams, Stone's intelligence officer, "we're receiving signals from multiple systems. It appears other species have been monitoring our battle." Stone studied the reports with growing concern. The signals were not congratulations or diplomatic overtures. They were distress calls. "What kind of distress calls?" she asked. "Requests for assistance against various threats. Slavers, raiders, aggressive expansion by militaristic species. It seems word has spread about what we did here." The implications were staggering. Across the galaxy, oppressed civilizations were preparing their own SOS signals, hoping to draw the legendary Deathworlders to their aid. Dr. Mira Kelton, now serving as the Alliance's chief xenolinguist, brought even more disturbing news. "Ambassador, I've been analyzing the communication patterns. It's not just random requests. Someone is coordinating these signals." "What do you mean?" "I mean there's an organized network of species that want humanity to become the galaxy's unofficial military force. They're deliberately creating situations where we'll feel obligated to intervene." Stone realized the full scope of what Earth had stumbled into. By answering one distress call, humanity had declared itself the protector of innocent life throughout this region of space. "How many systems are requesting assistance?" she asked quietly. 47 confirmed, Kelton reported, with more signals arriving every day. The weight of decision fell on Stone's shoulders. Earth's resources were vast but not infinite. They could not save everyone. But how could they choose who deserved protection and who did not? The final report came from long-range reconnaissance teams exploring former Krek's territory. What they found changed everything. "Ambassador," reported Captain Bradley from his survey ship, "you need to see this. The Kreks weren't just raiders. They were running from something. The survey data showed evidence of a massive conflict in the galactic core region. Entire star systems had been sterilized. Billions of beings had fled toward the rim worlds, and the Kreks had been among the refugees. What could drive the Kreks to become raiders? Stone wondered aloud. The answer came from a damaged Kreks data core recovered from Grixoth's fortress. When translated, the records told a story of terror that made the Ashti crisis seem small by comparison. Something was moving through the galaxy, consuming entire civilizations and leaving nothing but empty space behind. The Kreks had become predators because they were running from something even worse. As Stone read the final intelligence summary, she understood that humanity's greatest challenge was not conquest or expansion. It was deciding what kind of galaxy they wanted to create with their fleet of steel. The Ashti were safe. The Kreks' threat was ended. But across the vast darkness of space, hundreds of civilizations looked toward the Sol system with hope and desperation. Earth had become the galaxy's protector, whether they wanted the job or not. And somewhere in the darkness between stars, something else was watching humanity's rise with great interest. The age of human expansion had begun, but it would be written in steel and paid for in blood. The question was not whether humanity could handle the responsibility, but whether the galaxy could handle humanity. The silence of deep space broke with a transmission that would change everything. Ambassador Cathara pressed her trembling hands against the communication console as tears flowed down her face. Around her, the last government bunker of Valos Prime shook from another impact. The scourge had reached the capital city. "This is Ambassador Cathara of the Valdari Republic, broadcasting on all frequencies," she spoke into the transmitter. Her voice carried across the galaxy, reaching species she had never met. "Our world is dying. The scourge came 3 months ago as small pods from space. We thought they were meteors. We were wrong." She paused, listening to the screams echoing through the bunker's metal walls. Outside, her people were being consumed by creatures that defied all logic. The scourge didn't just kill. They transformed everything they touched into more of themselves. They landed in our forests first. Within days, the trees began to change. Their bark turned black and started breathing. The roots grew into networks that pulsed with alien blood. Our animals fled, but the scourge caught them. What came back wore their faces but served the hive. Captain Blake Morrison of the human exploration vessel, Harbinger, was checking routine sensor sweeps when the message came through. His ship was 3 days out from the frontier colonies, conducting standard mapping operations. The Valdari signal was weak but clear enough to understand. "Sir, you need to hear this," said Communications Officer Janet Mills. She was young, barely 2 years out of the academy, but her face had gone pale. "It's a distress call. Multiple alien languages, but our computers are translating." Blake listened as the ambassador's words filled the bridge. Around him, his crew of 23 stopped their work. Engineer Thomas Rodriguez stepped closer to the speakers. Science Officer Luna Reeves pulled up star charts trying to locate the source. "The scourge consumed our military first," Cathara continued. "They studied our weapons, our tactics, our weaknesses. Then they began creating new forms specifically designed to hunt us. Creatures with our faces that could walk among us. Beasts that could breathe our atmosphere and digest our flesh while we still lived." The transmission crackled with interference. In the background, they could hear explosions and something else. A sound like wet fabric tearing, but magnified 1,000 times. "We have tried everything. Our scientists developed toxins that killed them for hours before they adapted. Our military used fusion weapons that only made them stronger. We contacted 17 other species for help. 7 tried to assist us. All 7 lost their rescue fleets to the scourge. The creatures learned from each battle and became deadlier." Rodriguez clenched his fists. He had grown up on Mars, where survival meant fighting the environment every day. The idea of an entire species being hunted to extinction made his stomach turn. "Captain, we have to help them." Luna shook her head. "Tom, we're an exploration ship. We have mining lasers and survey drones, not military weapons. What could we possibly do against something that destroyed 7 rescue fleets?" Blake studied the readings on his screen. The signal was coming from a system 4 days away at maximum speed. Long-range sensors showed massive energy signatures around the source planet. Whatever was happening there, it was big. "The scourge don't negotiate," Cathara's voice continued. "They don't show mercy. They exist only to consume and grow. Our philosophers believe they are a weapon created by some ancient species, programmed to devour everything organic. If so, their creators are long dead, and the weapon has forgotten how to stop. The ambassador paused, and they could hear her sobbing. When she spoke again, her voice was stronger, filled with desperate hope. To any species receiving this transmission, we offer everything. Our technology, our art, our history, our planet's entire mineral wealth. We will serve as your vassals for 1,000 generations if you will just save our children. The Scourge will reach our final cities in 6 days. After that, the Valdari Republic will exist only in this recording. Blake made his decision. Janet, open a channel. All frequencies, maximum power. Sir? The young officer looked confused. We're not a military vessel. Command protocols require we contact Colonial Defense first. No time, Blake said firmly. By the time Colonial Defense organizes a response, those people will be dead. He activated the transmitter himself. This is Captain Blake Morrison of the human vessel Harbinger. Ambassador Cathara, we have received your distress call. The response came within minutes, faster than light-speed communications allowed. The Valdari must have been monitoring all channels desperately. Human vessel, this is Ambassador Cathara. Please confirm, did you say human? Her voice carried surprise along with hope. Our databases show humans as originating from a Class 12 death world. How is this possible? No species from such a hostile environment has ever developed spaceflight. Rodriguez laughed grimly. Lady, you have no idea what we're capable of. Blake gestured for quiet. Ambassador, humans have been spacefaring for over 2 centuries. We've colonized 47 worlds and established trade with 16 alien species. What is your current tactical situation? Captain Morrison, the Scourge controls 60% of our planet's surface. They have consumed 12 of our largest cities and created hive structures that reach into orbit. Our remaining population is approximately 40 million, scattered in underground shelters. We estimate 6 days before total planetary consumption. Luna was running calculations on her tablet. Captain, even if we called for help right now, Colonial Defense couldn't get a fleet here for 2 weeks minimum. The bureaucracy alone would take days. Blake nodded. Ambassador, I need you to understand something. Humans don't operate the same way as other species you've contacted. We don't send rescue missions to deal with extinction-level threats. Cathara's voice became desperate. Captain Morrison, please. We are offering everything we possess. Surely there must be some price that would motivate your people to help us? You misunderstand, Blake replied, his voice growing cold. We don't send rescue missions because rescue missions assume you can save everyone. When humans face an enemy that threatens to wipe out an entire species, we don't try to rescue. We try to make sure the threat never threatens anyone again. The bridge went quiet. Through the speakers they could hear Cathara's confused breathing. I don't understand, Captain. Are you refusing to help? Blake looked around at his crew. Rodriguez was nodding. Mills had tears in her eyes but was already preparing long-range communications equipment. Even Luna, despite her logical concerns, was pulling up ship specifications for colonial defense vessels. Ambassador Cathara, humanity accepts your plea for help. But I want you to understand something about my species. We evolved on a world where everything was trying to kill us. Storms that could level mountains. Predators that hunted in packs. Diseases that killed millions. We survived by becoming something that scared the things that wanted to eat us. He paused, watching the tactical displays that showed the Scourge spreading across the Valdari homeworld like a plague. You asked for salvation. We're going to give you something better. We're going to give you retribution. But when this is over, every species in the galaxy is going to know exactly what humans do to threats that consume entire civilizations. The transmission ended, leaving Cathara staring at her communicator in confusion and growing hope. Around her, the few remaining government officials looked at each other with expressions they hadn't worn in months. For the first time since the Scourge arrived, someone hadn't promised to try. They had promised to succeed. Blake turned to his crew. Janet, send a priority message to Terra Command. Tell them we need the 7th Fleet, and we need them armed for total war. Tom, plot a course for Valdari space maximum speed. Luna, I want you to analyze everything in those transmissions. Biology, tactics, technology. When we get there, I want to know how to kill these things permanently. As the Harbinger changed course toward a war zone 4 days away, Captain Blake Morrison made one final log entry. The Valdari asked for salvation from an unstoppable enemy. They're about to learn the difference between being saved and being avenged, and the Scourge are about to discover why nothing on Earth stays apex predator for long. Admiral Rebecca Cross stood in the war room of Terra Command. staring at the holographic display that showed the Valdari system. Red markers indicated scourge infestation zones. They covered most of the planet like a spreading cancer. "How long since we received Morrison's message?" she asked. 18 hours, ma'am," replied Colonel James Mitchell, her aide. "The Harbinger is still 3 days out from Valdari space. Captain Morrison is requesting immediate military support." Rebecca studied the tactical data they had received from the distress calls. The Scourge were unlike anything in the military databases. They adapted to weapons, converted organic matter into more of themselves, and showed tactical intelligence that suggested a hive mind. "Get me Dr. Marcus Webb from Xenobiology," she ordered, "and contact the Admiralty. I want authorization for a full fleet deployment." 20 minutes later, Dr. Webb entered the war room, carrying data tablets and looking worried. He was a thin man with gray hair who had studied alien life forms for 30 years. Nothing in his experience compared to what he saw in the Valdari recordings. "Admiral, I've analyzed the biological data from the transmissions. These scourge organisms violate several fundamental laws of biology as we understand them." "Explain," Rebecca said simply. "They can convert any organic matter into their own tissue within hours. They adapt to toxins and energy weapons faster than natural selection should allow. Most disturbing, they appear to share information instantly across vast distances. When one scourge learns something, they all know it." Dr. Webb activated a holographic display showing microscopic images of scourge tissue samples that the Valdari had transmitted. "Look at this cellular structure. It's not evolved. It's designed. These creatures are artificial, created by some advanced species as a biological weapon. The problem is whoever made them is gone, and the weapon has been running wild for centuries." Rebecca absorbed this information while studying fleet deployment options. The 7th Human Expeditionary Fleet was currently stationed at Proxima Base, 2 days from Valdari space if they pushed their engines. "What's your assessment, Doctor? Can they be stopped?" "Traditional methods won't work. The 7 alien rescue fleets tried conventional weapons, evacuation procedures, and even negotiation. The Scourge adapted to everything and consumed the rescue ships. They're now using stolen technology to enhance their capabilities." The door opened and Admiral Thomas Kane entered. He commanded the 7th Fleet and had been fighting alien threats for 15 years. His scarred face showed he had survived battles that killed thousands of others. "Rebecca, I got your message. You want to deploy my entire fleet against these scourge creatures? The situation is that serious, Tom. An entire species is facing extinction, and if the scourge finish consuming the Valdari homeworld, they'll have the resources to spread to other systems." Admiral Kane studied the tactical displays. "These creatures destroyed 7 rescue fleets. What makes you think we'll do better?" Dr. Webb spoke up. "With respect, Admiral, those were rescue fleets. They were trying to save people and preserve the planet. They had to limit their weapons and tactics to avoid harming civilians." "And?" Kane asked. "Humans don't approach warfare the same way. We've read the after-action reports from those failed rescue missions. Every species tried to minimize collateral damage. They used precision weapons and avoided contaminating the biosphere." Rebecca nodded grimly. "The Scourge exploited that, Mercy. They hid among civilian populations and used captured infrastructure as shields. But we're not going there to rescue people, Tom. We're going there to end the Scourge threat permanently." Kane's expression grew interested. "Total war doctrine? Complete elimination. The Valdari planet is already contaminated beyond saving. Our mission is to make sure nothing leaves that system alive." Dr. Webb pulled up additional data. "I've been studying human military history. Our species has faced extinction-level threats before. Supervolcano eruptions, asteroid impacts, plague outbreaks. Each time we survived by being willing to sacrifice anything necessary to ensure the species continued. The other galactic civilizations don't think that way," Rebecca continued. "They try to preserve life, to find peaceful solutions, to minimize harm. Those are admirable qualities that make for stable civilizations. But when facing an enemy that exists only to consume and grow, mercy becomes a weakness." Admiral Kane was already accessing fleet rosters on his tablet. "What force authorization are you giving me?" "Unlimited. I want the Scourge to understand what it means to face a species that evolved by killing everything that threatened us." Kane smiled grimly. 12 dreadnoughts, 47 destroyers, 6 heavy cruisers and support vessels. Full antimatter torpedo loadouts, plasma bombardment capability, and something special I've been saving for a real threat. "Which is?" Dr. Webb asked. "Ramming ships. automated vessels designed to accelerate to maximum speed and self-destruct inside enemy formations. Most species consider that barbaric. Humans consider it efficient. Rebecca activated the main communication system, connecting her to military commanders across human space. Within an hour, reports were coming in from 43 star systems as the war machine mobilized. The response shocked even experienced military officers. Colonial Defense volunteered their reserve fleets. The Mining Guild offered their industrial ships as support vessels. Even civilian cargo haulers requested permission to carry supplies. Meanwhile, other alien civilizations were monitoring human communications. The elegant Sephiran Council held emergency sessions to discuss the Deathworlder response to the Valdari crisis. Ambassador Thelana of the Sephirans transmitted a message to Terra Command. Admiral Cross, the Sephiran Council wishes to express concern about your military deployment. The Valdari situation requires delicate handling and precise intervention. Mass deployment of weapons suggests humans are approaching this as conquest rather than rescue. Rebecca's response was broadcast on open frequencies, so every species could hear it. Ambassador Thelana, humans are not going to Valdari space to conquer anything. We're going there to make sure the Scourge never threaten another species again. If your people consider that barbaric, you're welcome to send your own rescue mission. But understand this, mercy toward an enemy that shows no mercy is not virtue. It's complicity in genocide. The transmission ended, leaving alien diplomats across the galaxy stunned by the directness of human intentions. Back in the war room, Admiral Kane was finalizing deployment orders. Fleet launches in 6 hours. Estimated arrival at Valdari space, 72 hours after departure. Dr. Webb was still analyzing Scourge data. Admiral, there's something else you should know. The creatures are intelligent, but their intelligence is purely predatory. They don't create art, philosophy, or technology beyond what they need to consume more efficiently. In human terms, they're perfect sociopaths on a species level, which means, Rebecca asked, they won't surrender. They won't negotiate. They won't show mercy if they gain the upper hand. This will be a war of extinction. Either we eliminate them completely, or they'll eventually consume everything organic in the galaxy. Admiral Kane stood to leave. Then it's simple. We make sure we're the species that survives. As he departed to prepare the fleet, Rebecca made one final transmission to Captain Morrison aboard the Harbinger. Blake, this is Admiral Cross. Hold your position at the edge of Valdari space until the fleet arrives. Do not engage the Scourge directly. I know you want to help those people immediately. But we need intelligence on current enemy capabilities before we commit to battle. Blake's response came back 12 hours later, delayed by distance. Admiral understood and acknowledged. But I need you to know, the Valdari are dying by the millions every day we wait. I hope our fleet is worth their sacrifice. Rebecca stared at the tactical displays showing Scourge expansion across the Valdari homeworld. In 72 hours, the human 7th Fleet would arrive at an alien world to fight the galaxy's most dangerous predator. But as she watched preparation reports stream in from across human space, she realized something that would terrify every other species in the galaxy. Once they understood it, the Scourge thought they were the apex predators. They had never encountered a species that became apex predators by making everything else extinct first. In 72 hours, they would learn the difference between being an evolved weapon and facing a species that chose to become one. The 7th Human Fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Valdari system, and immediately faced something that had broken the morale of every previous rescue attempt. The planet before them no longer looked like a world. It looked like a living nightmare. Captain Elena Vasquez stood on the bridge of the destroyer Vengeance, watching the tactical displays with grim fascination. Massive organic spires stretched from the planet's surface into orbit, pulsing with bioluminescent patterns. The very atmosphere seemed to writhe with parasitic organisms that blocked their sensors. Admiral Kane, this is Captain Vasquez. Initial sensor sweeps show the Scourge have consumed approximately 70% of planetary biomass. They've created orbital structures that appear to be launch platforms for spreading to other worlds. Acknowledged, Elena. Begin orbital bombardment of infected zones. All ships implement Protocol 7. Protocol 7 was something that had horrified alien observers when they learned of its existence. It meant the complete sterilization of any area showing enemy contamination, with no regard for preserving civilian infrastructure or minimizing environmental damage. The first human plasma bombardment lit up the dark side of Valos Prime like a miniature sun. The scourge spires that had taken months to grow were vaporized in seconds. For the first time in the conflict, the spreading infection actually retreated from the impact zones. Ambassador Cathara watched from her bunker's communication center as human ships methodically destroyed areas that had been considered permanently lost. Around her, the few remaining Valdari officials stared in amazement. "They're not trying to save the infected zones," said her aide Velthara. "They're just killing everything." "And it's working," Cathara whispered. "Look at the tactical displays. The Scourge are actually pulling back from the bombardment areas. No one has ever made them retreat before." The Scourge response came within hours. Bioships launched from the organic spires, living vessels that could regenerate damage and adapt to weapons. They had destroyed the previous rescue fleets by learning from each engagement and becoming resistant to the aliens' weapons. But humanity had studied the footage from those failed battles and prepared something different. Commander Jack O'Brien led a squadron of atmospheric fighters into the bioship formation. Instead of energy weapons or kinetic projectiles, his ships deployed clouds of concentrated acid and contact toxins designed to poison the Scourge respiratory systems. "All fighters, remember these things adapt to whatever kills them," O'Brien transmitted. "So we use something different every time. First wave, deploy chemical agents. Second wave, use thermal weapons. Third wave, kinetic impact. Don't give them time to develop immunity." The bioships began dying in ways they had never experienced. The Scourge organisms tried to adapt to the acid, but by the time they developed resistance, the human fighters had switched to flame weapons. When they adapted to heat, the humans used freezing agents. Lieutenant Colonel Maria Santos coordinated ground operations as human troops in environmental suits landed on the planet's surface. What they found confirmed Dr. Webb's worst theories about the Scourge. "Command, this is Santos. The infected zones aren't just consumed. They've been completely transformed. The ground itself is breathing. Trees have become organic towers full of creatures we've never seen before. It's like the entire ecosystem has been converted into a single organism." "What about civilian casualties in those zones?" Admiral Kane asked. "Sir, there are no civilians left to rescue. The Scourge don't just kill people, they absorb them. We're finding organic masses that contain fragments of Valdari DNA, but nothing that could still be considered alive in any meaningful sense." This report spread through human command channels and eventually reached the alien observers monitoring the battle. The elegant Sephiran Council transmitted urgent protests about human tactics. "Admiral Kane, this is Ambassador Thelana. The Sephiran Council demands you cease orbital bombardment immediately. You are destroying an entire planet's biosphere. Surely there must be surgical methods to remove the Scourge contamination while preserving the world's natural environment." Kane's response was broadcast on open frequencies, so every species could hear it. "Ambassador, the Scourge have converted the biosphere into a weapon factory. Every tree, every animal, every microorganism on this planet now exists to create more Scourge. There is no natural environment left to preserve." The real shock came when the Scourge deployed their ultimate adaptation. They began taking human form, creating near-perfect mimics to infiltrate the fleet. It was a tactic that had devastated previous rescue missions, as alien species found it nearly impossible to distinguish the imposters from their own people. But Private David Kumar spotted the first infiltrator within minutes of its arrival on his ship. "Sir, there's something wrong with the new transfer," he reported to his sergeant. "Something about the way he moves. His breathing pattern is wrong, and he keeps looking around like he's trying to memorize the ship's layout." The imposter was captured and studied. Dr. Webb's examination revealed something that amazed the xenobiology team. The Scourge created a perfect physical copy down to the cellular level, Webb reported to Admiral Kane. But they couldn't replicate the psychological patterns. Humans who grew up on Earth develop unconscious behaviors for detecting threats and avoiding predators. We instinctively watch for signs of deception because our ancestors survived by being paranoid. "Are you saying humans are naturally better at spotting shapeshifters?" Kane asked. "I'm saying a species that evolved by being hunted develops very good instincts for recognizing when something is pretending to be safe." This discovery led to new tactics. Human soldiers were paired with detection specialists who could identify Scourge infiltrators by observing their behavior patterns. Within days, the infiltration strategy that had crippled other rescue Missions became useless against human forces. But the most terrifying moment came when a captured scourge organism began screaming. It wasn't using sound in any frequency that most species could detect, but humans could hear it. The creature's screams contained harmonics that triggered instinctive fear responses in human nervous systems. Dr. Webb analyzed the recordings and made a discovery that changed everything. "Admiral, this isn't a war cry or a call for help. I've compared the acoustic patterns to human vocal stress analysis. The creature is expressing fear. Terror, specifically." "Fear of what?" Kane asked. "Fear of us. The Scourge have consumed 17 civilizations, but they've never faced a species that fights back the way humans do. We don't try to preserve their habitat. We don't show mercy to their offspring. We don't attempt negotiation. From their perspective, we must seem like demons that exist only to destroy." The implications spread through the human fleet and beyond. Other species monitoring the battle began to understand something that changed their perception of humanity forever. The Scourge were terrified. For the first time in their existence, they had encountered a species that was more ruthless than they were. Humans fought the way the Scourge consumed, with complete dedication to total victory and no concern for collateral damage. As the battle continued, General Robert Kane's ground forces advanced through Scourge territory, using controlled demolitions to destroy hive structures. They moved through toxic environments that would kill most species, protected by suits and breathing apparatus that let them fight in conditions worse than their homeworld. The Scourge tried every adaptation, every tactic that had worked against previous enemies. But humans had evolved on a planet where adaptation meant survival, and they were better at it than artificial organisms designed by a dead civilization. Captain Vasquez transmitted the final report of the day to Admiral Kane. "Sir, Scourge forces are retreating from all combat zones. They're abandoning planetary positions and consolidating around their orbital launch platforms. Intelligence suggests they're preparing to evacuate." "Evacuate?" Kane's voice carried surprise. "The Scourge have never retreated from a planet before." "Sir, according to the Valdari historical data, the Scourge have never needed to retreat before. They've never faced a species that made them more afraid than they made others." Admiral Kane realized they had achieved something unprecedented in galactic history. They had made the galaxy's most feared predators afraid. But as he watched the tactical displays showing Scourge forces massing around escape vectors, he understood the real battle was just beginning. The creatures weren't retreating in defeat. They were regrouping for something desperate, and desperate predators were always the most dangerous. The galactic community watched in stunned silence as something unprecedented happened. The Scourge, for the first time in recorded history, began evacuating a planet they had been consuming. Massive bioships launched from the organic spires around Valos Prime, carrying genetic material and living specimens toward the outer system. Dr. Lisa Park, the fleet's chief biologist, studied the evacuation patterns from her laboratory aboard the command ship. Her team had been analyzing captured Scourge specimens for 3 days, and their findings were disturbing. "Admiral Kane, the Scourge aren't just retreating. They're implementing a survival strategy we've never seen before. They're preserving core genetic samples and adaptive templates. This suggests they're planning to spread to multiple systems simultaneously." Kane reviewed the tactical displays showing bioships moving toward hyperspace jump points. "How many systems are we talking about, Doctor?" Based on their current biomass and the ships we're tracking, they could seed at least 12 neighboring systems. Each seed would contain enough genetic diversity to restart the consumption process on a new world. But the human response was already in motion. Communications Officer Noah Wright coordinated with Ambassador Kethara to identify every possible Scourge escape route. The Valdari had been tracking the creature's movements for months and possessed detailed navigation data about their behavior patterns. "Admiral, the Ambassador confirms that Scourge bioships always follow the shortest hyperspace routes to inhabited systems," Wright reported. "They don't have the intelligence for complex navigation. They just follow the path that leads to the most organic matter." "Then we know where they're going," Kane said grimly. "All ships implement containment protocol. Nothing leaves this system alive." What happened next shocked every alien observer. Human ships positioned themselves at every hyperspace exit point in the system. Destroyers deployed fusion mines throughout local space. Heavy cruisers powered up interdiction fields that could disrupt hyperspace engines. Captain Morrison aboard the Harbinger coordinated the outer perimeter. "This is Morrison to all vessels. We are implementing total quarantine. Any Scourge ship that attempts to leave this system will be destroyed regardless of size or defensive capabilities. The Sephiran Council transmitted urgent protests. Admiral Kane, this is Ambassador Thelana. The Sephiran Council demands you allow the Scourge to withdraw peacefully. Preventing their retreat violates galactic laws regarding warfare and the rights of sentient species. Kane's response was broadcast across the galaxy. Ambassador, the Scourge have consumed 17 civilizations. They don't retreat to negotiate or coexist. They retreat to spread somewhere else and continue consuming. Allowing them to escape would be complicity in future genocides. But the Scourge had one final, desperate strategy. They began launching escape pods toward distant systems. Small vessels that could slip through human detection grids. Each pod contained enough genetic material to restart the infestation process on a new world. Dr. Park detected the launch signatures and realized the scope of the threat. Admiral, they're not just trying to escape. They're trying to ensure survival through numbers. If even one pod reaches an inhabited system, the entire cycle starts over. Kane activated the emergency command channel. All ships implement Scorched Earth Protocol. Deploy deep space sensors and intercept anything moving faster than natural debris. Use any means necessary to prevent escape. The Scorched Earth Protocol was something most alien species had never heard of. It represented humanity's ultimate contingency for dealing with extinction-level threats. Every human ship began deploying long-range weapon systems, designed to track and destroy targets across interstellar distances. Captain Elena Vasquez coordinated hunter-killer squadrons that pursued individual escape pods across the outer system. Target acquired at bearing 27 Mark IV, deploying long-range interceptor missile. The precision was terrifying to alien observers. Human weapons could track and destroy individual Scourge pods across millions of kilometers of space. No other species had developed such ruthless efficiency in preventing escape. But the real shock came when the Scourge attempted their final gambit. Deep in their central hive structure, the queen organism activated a communication array and broadcast across all frequencies. Human fleet, this is the Scourge collective consciousness. We request immediate ceasefire and negotiation. We offer to withdraw all forces from this system and provide compensation for damages to the Valdari civilization. The transmission reached every ship in the fleet and every monitoring station across the galaxy. For the first time in recorded history, the Scourge were attempting to communicate with their enemies. Other species immediately urged humanity to accept the offer. The Quantum Collective transmitted mathematical proofs that negotiation would result in fewer casualties. The Ethereal Assembly provided philosophical arguments about the value of mercy toward defeated enemies. But Admiral Kane's response silenced the galaxy. Scourge Collective. This is Admiral Kane of the Human Fleet. We have reviewed your history of consuming 17 civilizations. We have analyzed your biology and determined that your species exists only to convert organic matter into more of yourselves. We have concluded that negotiation with you is impossible because your fundamental nature prevents coexistence. The transmission paused as alien civilizations held their breath. Your request for negotiation is denied. Your species will be eliminated completely to prevent future genocides. This is not hatred. This is pest control on a galactic scale. The word spread across the galaxy like a shockwave. Humans had just declared their intention to commit xenocide against the Scourge and justified it as a necessary action for galactic security. Dr. Park made a discovery that changed everything. While analyzing the queen organism's communication attempts, she found something hidden in the Scourge biostructures. Admiral, I'm detecting artificial control systems within the Hive network. The Scourge aren't just evolved predators. They're still following programmed instructions from their creators. What kind of instructions? Kane asked. Basic biological imperatives. Consume, adapt, spread, survive. But there's something else. A master control protocol buried deep in their genetic structure. If we could access it, we might be able to reprogram their fundamental directives. Kane realized what she was suggesting. You want to hack their biology and turn them against themselves? It's possible. But it would require accessing their central control matrix. Someone would have to penetrate the heart of their largest hive structure and interface directly with their queen organism's neural network. The implications were staggering. Instead of just killing the Scourge, humans could potentially reprogram them to serve beneficial purposes or even make them self-destruct through biological imperative override. But it would require ground forces to assault the most heavily defended position in Scourge territory and survive long enough to complete a complex technical operation while under attack by creatures specifically evolved to kill efficiently. Kane made his decision. Dr. Park, prepare your technical team. Colonel Foster, select your best assault specialists. We're going into the heart of the hive to end this permanently. As human forces prepared for the most dangerous mission in their military history, the galaxy watched with a mixture of awe and terror. The Deathworlders weren't content to simply defeat the Scourge. They were going to reprogram them. The final battle would take place inside the enemy's most secure stronghold, where humanity would prove that even artificial predators, designed by ancient civilizations, were not beyond the reach of species that had learned to kill everything that threatened them. Admiral Kane transmitted final orders to the fleet. All ships maintain containment positions. If our assault team fails, implement final protocol. Collapse local hyperspace and ensure nothing escapes this system. The Scourge end here, one way or another. The stage was set for humanity to demonstrate that being apex predators meant more than just winning battles. It meant ensuring that threats to the galaxy were eliminated so completely that they could never arise again. The Scourge nest ship hung in space like a diseased moon, its surface crawling with organic growths that pulsed with alien light. It was the size of a small asteroid, containing the collective intelligence of the entire Scourge species. If Dr. Park's theory was correct, somewhere inside that nightmare lay the control matrix that could end the threat forever. Colonel Amanda Foster led the assault team in modified drop pods designed to penetrate organic armor. Her team of 12 specialists included Dr. Park, Chief Engineer Yuki Tanaka, and combat veterans who had volunteered for what everyone knew was likely a suicide mission. Remember, we're not here to destroy the hive, Foster transmitted as their pods approached the nest ship. We need to reach the central matrix intact. Use precision weapons only. Save the heavy explosives for our retreat. The drop pod slammed into the nest ship's surface, boring through layers of living tissue that tried to heal around the intrusion. Emergency lighting revealed corridors that looked more like arteries than hallways, pulsing with fluids that might have once been blood from a dozen different species. Sergeant Mike Torres took point, his sensors detecting movement in passages that branched in all directions. Ma'am, these corridors are organic. The walls are breathing, and I'm picking up heartbeats coming from deeper in the structure. Dr. Park consulted her bioscanner as they moved through the nightmare architecture. The entire ship is a single organism. We're walking through its circulatory system. The central matrix should be located where the neural pathways are most concentrated. They encountered their first defenders within minutes. Scourge creatures that had never been seen before emerged from the walls themselves, their bodies perfectly adapted to fight in the cramped conditions. But human soldiers had trained for urban warfare and tunnel fighting. They moved with deadly efficiency through spaces that would terrify most species. Chief Engineer Tanaka analyzed the organic technology they passed. Colonel, these biosystems are incredibly advanced. The Scourge are using living computers that process information through chemical reactions. It's like the entire ship is a brain. Can you interface with it? Foster asked. Maybe, but I need to find the main processing center first. Meanwhile, above them in space, the battle for the system was reaching its climax. The remaining Scourge bioships made desperate attempts to break through human containment. Captain Morrison coordinated the outer perimeter as alien escape pods tried to slip past his sensors. Contact bearing 03 Mark 7, accelerating toward hyperspace jump point, reported his tactical officer. Deploying interceptor drones. But something unexpected happened. Ships from other alien civilizations began arriving in the system, not to interfere but to help. The Sephiran Council sent 3 vessels equipped with advanced sensor arrays to track Scourge escape attempts. Ambassador Thelana transmitted to Admiral Kane. Admiral, the Sephiran Council has reconsidered our position. We understand now that some threats cannot be negotiated with. Our ships will assist in preventing Scourge escape. Similar messages came from the Quantum Collective, and even the Pacifist Ethereal Assembly. For the first time in galactic history, multiple species were cooperating in a military operation designed to completely eliminate another species. Deep inside the nest ship, Foster's team reached the central chamber. What they found defied description. The room was vast, filled with organic computers that stretched from floor to ceiling. At the center sat something that might once have been called a throne, occupied by a creature that was barely recognizable as having ever been organic. The Scourge Queen was a fusion of technology and biology, with neural interfaces that connected it directly to every Scourge organism in the galaxy. Dr. Park approached it carefully, her instruments detecting massive electrical activity in its enlarged brain structure. "Colonel, this is it, the central control matrix. But there's something else. The Queen is still connected to Scourge organisms across 12 systems. If I can reprogram the core directives, the changes will propagate through their entire network instantly." Chief Engineer Tanaka connected her interface equipment to the organic computers. "I'm detecting the original programming code. It's incredibly complex, but it's still following the basic directives programmed by its creators thousands of years ago." "What do those directives say?" Foster asked while her soldiers maintained perimeter security. "Consume organic matter to increase biomass. Adapt to threats to ensure survival. Spread to new environments to maximize growth." There's no programmed limit or off switch. The creators designed them to run indefinitely. Dr. Park began working with the alien code, her fingers flying over keyboards as she translated ancient programming languages. "I can change the core directive. Instead of consuming organic matter, I can make them process their own biomass. They'll essentially digest themselves out of existence." But the reprogramming process triggered the Nest ship's final defense. Every Scourge organism in the galaxy received the same command simultaneously: protect the Queen at all costs. The assault team found themselves facing creatures that materialized from the walls themselves, fighting with desperate fury. Sergeant Torres held the entrance while Foster coordinated their defense. "Ma'am, we've got incoming from all directions. These things are coming through the ventilation, the floor, even the ceiling. I don't think we can hold this position much longer." "How much more time do you need?" Foster asked Dr. Park. 5 minutes to implement the core changes. Another 10 to verify they're propagating through the network." "We don't have 15 minutes, Foster replied, watching her ammunition counters drop toward 0. That's when Chief Engineer Tanaka made a discovery that changed everything. "Colonel, there's a fail-safe protocol in the original programming. If I trigger it, the Queen will shut down all Scourge organisms to preserve core genetic samples for future regeneration. And then Dr. Park can reprogram the revival protocols. When they restart, they'll follow new directives." Foster made the decision that would end the Scourge forever. "Do it." The effect was instantaneous. Every Scourge organism in the galaxy stopped moving. The creatures attacking Foster's team simply collapsed. Throughout the Nest ship, millions of organisms went into hibernation mode, following programming that was older than human civilization. Dr. Park worked frantically with the control systems. "I'm rewriting the revival protocols now. When they restart, their core directive will be to convert their own biomass into base elements. They'll essentially compost themselves." "Will it hurt them?" Foster asked. "They won't experience it as pain. To them, it will feel like following their most fundamental biological imperative. They'll be driven to complete the process as strongly as they were driven to consume other species." 10 minutes later, Dr. Park activated the new programming. Across the galaxy, Scourge organisms began to stir. But instead of resuming their consumption patterns, they began breaking down their own biological structures, converting themselves into harmless organic matter. The process was irreversible and would spread through their entire species within days. Admiral Kane received the mission success signal as Foster's team extracted from the Nest ship. "All ships, mission accomplished. The Scourge threat has been permanently eliminated. Begin recovery operations for Valdari survivors." But the real impact was felt across the galaxy. Other species realized that humanity had not just defeated the Scourge, they had reprogrammed them. The Deathworlders possessed the technical capability and moral willingness to completely rewrite another species' fundamental nature. Ambassador Cathara stood in her bunker, watching through sensors as the Scourge infection across her world began to dissolve. The organic spires that had stretched into orbit were crumbling into nutrient-rich soil. The creatures that had terrorized her people for months were peacefully breaking down into base components. She transmitted one final message to the human fleet. "Admiral Kane, the Valdari Republic owes humanity a debt that can never be repaid. But I must ask, what you have done here, this complete elimination of a species, does this concern you?" Kane's response was heard by monitoring stations across the galaxy. "Ambassador, the Scourge were designed weapons that had forgotten how to stop. They would have eventually consumed every organic species in the galaxy. We didn't commit genocide. We performed surgery on a galactic cancer. He paused, watching the tactical displays as the last scourge organisms completed their programmed self-destruction. But every species now knows what humanity is capable of when we identify a true existential threat. We hope that knowledge prevents future situations requiring such extreme measures. The human fleet departed Valdari space 3 days later, leaving behind monitoring stations and a small garrison. But they also left behind something that would change galactic politics forever. The knowledge that somewhere in the galaxy was a species capable of completely eliminating any threat, no matter how powerful or adaptable. As the ships entered hyperspace for the journey home, Captain Morrison made a final log entry that would become part of human military history. The Valdari asked for salvation from an unstoppable enemy. We gave them something better. We gave them proof that no threat is truly unstoppable, if you're willing to become something more dangerous than the thing trying to kill you. The scourge consumed 17 civilizations because those civilizations tried to preserve life while fighting for survival. Humanity survived because we learned long ago that sometimes to protect life, you must be willing to end it completely. The galaxy now knows that Earth doesn't negotiate with extinction-level threats. We eliminate them. And every potential threat to peaceful species will now have to consider whether their plans are worth facing the attention of Deathworlders who view total war as problem-solving. Ambassador Kethara's final transmission to the galactic community became legendary. We asked for salvation, and the